I have another thing I want to talk about with Trump right now, which is his disgusting attack of Nancy Pelosi at a recent rally. And we'll look, after we look at this clip from the rally, at Nancy Pelosi very accurately saying, yes, Trump is to blame. His rhetoric, the lies that he tells about me, is to blame for the attack that happened on Paul Pelosi, which of course was at Nancy and Paul Pelosi's house and was in an attempt to find Nancy Pelosi and break her kneecaps, was what the guy admitted who did the attack. And Trump didn't learn from that. Trump didn't feel some sort of remorse. Instead, he's now calling her an animal. Not alluding to, not anything, I'm not characterizing it as that. He's saying explicitly she's, quote, an animal. Look at this moment. Disgusting from a recent rally.
Innocent Americans killed, and killed in large numbers. Earlier this year, an MS-13 gang member was sentenced for helping lure a teenage boy to a playground, beating him in the head with a baseball bat, and brutally stabbing him 32 times. This was an animal. Nancy Pelosi said, please don't call them animals, they're human beings. I said, no, they're animals. Of course, I think she's an animal too, you want to know the truth. They'll say, oh, what a horrible thing she said about Nancy. She impeached me twice for nothing. Nothing. They'll say, oh, these people, the fakers back there. They'll say, what a horrible thing. He called Nancy Pelosi an animal. Let me tell you, what she does to this country and what she did to and the turmoil. And it was all, I used the word yesterday, I shouldn't. My great First Lady got very upset. I said, I will never use the word bullshit again. But what she did to us in this country, and yet we got more done as an administration and a president than just about any president in.
So besides the fact that, as usual, the way that he is conveying his ideas is just incoherent. Finish one sentence, then move on to another. Oh, this thing. But besides that, it is so vile to watch someone's husband get beat over the head with a hammer, and you find out that the ideology that led that guy to doing that act was rhetoric that you have spread, that your movement has spread, conspiracy theories that run wild in your movement. And instead of having some introspection and thinking, okay, we've gone too far, we can totally aggressively criticize one another within the political arena without demonizing each other to such an extent that we dehumanize and lead to actions like we saw at Nancy Pelosi's house. Of course, Paul Pelosi having to get skull surgery, if I'm not mistaken, getting his head beat with a hammer so severely. And so Trump's response to that is not all the things I just said of maybe some sort of remorse. Instead, it is to call her an animal. And if you know any history, you understand that the way movements do horrible things and promote horrible violence against other political ideologies and the groups behind them, against groups of people, is to demonize and dehumanize those people. Number one step you got to do to get your followers on board with horrible acts of violence is to dehumanize the other side. That doesn't mean criticize. That doesn't mean call dangerous to the country. None of that. It means going so far as to dehumanize. And he did it in the most old-fashioned, classic way possible, which is calling someone else an animal. I criticize Trump so much. Y'all understand that. I genuinely need everyone who watches my show to understand that he's a threat to democracy, thus a huge threat to the important parts of our country. And I can do all of those criticisms without ever having to call him an animal, because that is how you do political criticism. But he's not able to do that, and that's why we're seeing the political violence that we are, and it really, really scares me for the future. So here's Nancy Pelosi. We'll look at her directly addressing Trump's part in this, but first, just walking through the events of that day.
I was sleeping in Washington, D.C. I had just gotten in the night before from San Francisco. And I hear the doorbell ring and think, it's 5 something.
To be clear, she's you'll see, but getting choked up. She's not having a hard time thinking what she's gonna say. She is getting choked up.
I look up, I see it's 5. They must be the wrong apartment. No, it rings again, and then bang, 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 bang on the door. So I run to the door, and I'm very scared. I see this Capitol Police, and they said, we have to come in to talk to you. And I'm thinking, my children, my grandchildren. I never thought it would be Paul, because, I knew he wouldn't be out and about, shall we say. And so they came in at that time. We didn't even know where he was or what his condition was. We just knew there was an assault on him in our home.
Guys, it doesn't matter what you think of anyone politically. You do not need to have that news be delivered to you. That you thought your husband was safe and sound, and the Capitol Police have to tell her, no, he was assaulted in his own home. The scariest place to be assaulted, because then you're not going to feel safe anywhere, unfortunately. And then here's her addressing him, Donald Trump, directly.
President Biden drew a line between what happened on January 6th and the attack on your husband. The president said, I quote, "The assailant entered the home asking, 'Where's Nancy? Where's Nancy?' Those were the very same words used by the mob when they stormed the United States Capitol on January 6th.
That's right.
Do you draw that same line?
Absolutely. There's no question. It's the same thing. And copycat, whatever it happens to be, inflamed by the same misrepresentation. But the fact is, right now, it's time for healing. We want the country to heal. This is not a path that we can continue on. And we want people to run for office, local.
It takes some serious, restraint to turn the conversation to healing when you're addressing the person, one of the people, the leader of the movement that informed the individual who attacked your husband in the way that it did and leading him to doing what he did to her husband. It takes restraint to just quickly say, no question that Trump played a role in this, but let's talk about healing and let's continue this conversation in a different direction. Wow. Because the anger that I would have in that moment would probably be stronger than any other feeling, any other wisdom to bring the conversation broader than just the deep disgust I have for one of the people who undeniably, whose rhetoric at least undeniably led to the action that was done on my husband. Truly scary for what this means going forward. I am very, very afraid on that front. Thank you so much for watching. If you want to be a part of what makes this show possible, plus get access to the full video version of the show hours before any of the clips are uploaded to YouTube, plus get access to an extra full show every Saturday that only members can see, you can do so by going to patreon.com/Luke Beasley. That's patreon.com/Luke Beasley, and there is a link in the description.